So I was wandering around the ramp at my home base of Venice, Florida last month and spotted this airplane. And then... And look, it's Ivy Mciver of
Hey,
Cirrus.
Paul, how's it going? Good to see you.
This is obviously the new TRAC. Tell us a little bit about it.
So this is the TRAC SR20. It's an SR20 that's configured specifically for the aircraft training market, and I can't wait to tell you all about it.
Okay, well, let's go inside and talk about it. So Ivy, tell us what the basic plan for the TRAC is. Cirrus, it's not the first trainer Cirrus has sold, but this is specifically designed to be a trainer. So what's the product thinking behind it?
Right, so Cirrus has been producing and delivering airplanes for just over 20 years in the current form of the SR series airplanes. The SR20 was first delivered in July of '99, so we've been at it for quite some time. And during those 20 years, the SR20 and the SR22, and in some instances the SR22T, have been used in flight training environments all over the world in different sort of iterations. So there are militaries that are using the SR20 and the SR22 for flight training. There are airlines who are using the SR series for flight training. And then throughout the world, there are small and medium-sized retail flight training entities that are using the Cirrus for primary and advanced flight training. I think a lot of the perception of the Cirruses that are out there is that it's a high-end luxury retail plane. But in fact, the United States Air Force uses it at the Air Force Academy. The Chilean Air Force uses it. The French Air Force uses it. So, it sort of has a lot of presence in a variety of flight training entities. And we kind of took a look at our experience with using the SR series aircraft in flight training and the questions that we get asked from the people that are using the plane for flight training or shopping for planes to use in flight training. And then we took a look at how people ask to configure the planes before they're delivering them, what equipment they want on the planes and don't want on the planes. And really sort of took a step back and said, well, why don't we configure a plane that is specifically tailored towards the demands of a flight training environment. So things like making sure it was equipped with an autopilot, equipped with a lot of the safety equipment that any retail plane would have, and our retail planes would have. So dual ADAHRs and the electronic stability protection and the autopilot and things like that. But then sort of looked at what flight training institutions really need to handle the demands of flight training. So, you've got people coming in and out of the plane, multiple flights a day, multiple missions a day. You're, maybe 8 or 10 hours per day on the plane. You need things like very durable materials on the seats or anywhere that you touch anything in the airplane. Easy to clean, hard to tear, that sort of thing. And then some other small things that we've put as standard features into this plane are things like a landing gear simulator. That was something that a couple of the ab initio airline programs asked for because they are training people for bigger airplanes. It's kind of this concept called downloading, right? So, hey, I know that my end goal is for all of these people who are starting to learn how to fly the Airbus or fly the Boeing or fly the, whatever the bigger airliner is. So we're gonna start with that goal and then work downwards so that from the get-go, that initial primary training is done to support the end goal of being an airliner. So much for the TRAC basics. And let's dispense with the name right off. It's nothing fancy, it just means training aircraft, a nomenclature nod to the military market Cirrus will pitch the airplane to. These buyers also like oversized placards labeling critical components and specs. Paint job can be customized in school colors and logos too. And speaking of specs, the SR20 is a largish airplane. It's fully 600 pounds heavier than the arch competitor Cessna 172, and the closest weight-wise is Diamond's DA40NG, which is 2,888 pounds. The TRAC has the largest useful load at about 980 pounds. The wingspan at 38 feet is 2 feet greater than Cessna Skyhawk, but the same as the Diamond DA40.
These dimensional variations probably don't matter much to individual owners, but they do to flight schools who have to muscle the airplanes around ramps and stick them in group hangars overnight. As you can see from the chart, Lycoming pretty much owns the flight trainer market, although Diamond has a share with its Austro diesels and singles and twins. The TRAC is based on the SR20 G6, for which Cirrus dropped the 6-cylinder Continental IO360 in favor of the Lycoming IO390 4-cylinder. That saved some weight and added 100 pounds of useful load. Price-wise, Cirrus obviously means to compete with Cessna. Here are the typical prices, but the real invoice, once all the options are added, will be closer to $500,000. That's what the major flight schools expect to pay, although Piper is trying to break that mold with the entry-level Pilot 100, priced at $259,000. Now let's hear the Cirrus sales pitch for why the TRAC is a good trainer.
So you're an instructor, from an instructor's point of view, what is the pitch to sell this to a flight school as a flight training aircraft?
So, I think there's quite a few advantages that this plane has in terms of being a very good flight training platform. Let's start with the airplane itself. The airplane itself is a very stable airframe. It's got the cuffed wing that's a stall-resistant, spin-resistant wing. It was actually a NASA design, which has been on the Cirrus since inception. The gear is actually designed to be very robust. It's meant to take the impact of the plane coming down under parachute. So, by default, that gear was designed to withstand a tremendous amount of load. So that the sort of happy side effect of that is that it's an ideal environment, or it's an ideal landing situation for a flight school where not all the landings are going to be perfect. So it's just got that really robust landing gear. Of course, the Behringer brakes and the tubeless Michelin pilot tires are also very robust, very long wear. So that durability is sort of built in. From a safety perspective, there's a lot of things that the Cirrus has inherently, making it a tremendously safe airplane, kind of pre-crash and during crash, right? So from an automation and sort of spatial awareness type of a situation, you've got these two really big displays. Standard is 10-inch. You can upgrade them to 12-inch. You've got a big moving map where you can see your airplane co-located on there. It's also going to be able to display traffic, weather, other obstacles, airports, airspace, all of that sort of thing. And then the PFD is showing you the synthetic vision. So the synthetic vision is basically showing you a synthetic or a computer-generated picture of what you would see out of the airplane on a clear day.
Since the mid-2000s, even basic trainers have been equipped with some version of Garmin's G1000 integrated avionics suite. These have become ever more sophisticated, and one feature that has become standard is envelope protection. It calls that ESP. Although you can switch it off, which you might want to do for training purposes, it's always on in the background.
So this airplane has as much automation basically as almost any airplane. Do flight schools of various sizes want that, and are they integrating that into the training from day one?
So, the avionics are kind of an interesting animal. You can shut off a lot of things if you want to start simple, and then you can start layering in and adding in some of the additional functionality. So if you chose to do in a flight training environment to train without the synthetic vision, for instance, you can actually turn the synthetic vision off so that you've just got an attitude indicator essentially. You can turn off the traffic. I think for the most part, people are leaving all of that in there because the bigger airplanes have all of this equipment, and getting someone used to using all of these things from a primary training standpoint is going to integrate the flow and integrate the usage of all of these tools right away, so it doesn't become an additional thing to learn later. It becomes something that just seems tremendously normal.
Yeah, and Cirrus envisions this as a first hour primary trainer,
correct?
So
yep.
When a student gets in for the first hour, this is what he or she is going to see.
Yes, exactly.
Cirrus can certainly claim it's the fastest of the fixed gear trainers, which it ought to be given the low drag and high horsepower. The freight for that is fuel burn. The TRAC will cruise comfortably in the mid 140s, burning 12 gallons an hour. Throttle it back and it will do 133 knots on about 10 gallons, and that's probably a good training setting. The Skyhawk won't go that fast, but the DA40 will on about a gallon less of fuel.
Power cruise. I'm just going to put the gear up, now that we're in cruise.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that now. It's a fixed gear airplane with a gear switch, and there's a reason for that.
Right, so we want to, one of the suggestions or asks from a lot of the airline facilities that we have as customers was that they wanted to incorporate putting the gear up and down into that primary flow. So you've got the landing gear simulator. It actually has a gear handle, 3 lights that show you if the gear is down, right? And then there's a panel on the instructor side where I can fail things. So I can fail gear going up, I can fail gear going down, I can
What
fail
is
it all.
it just a switch?
It's actually it's a couple of switches. So basically, I've got the ability to move this dial, and I can fail. So if I wanted to fail the landing gears coming down, and I wanted to fail just the left one, so go ahead and put the gear down.
Okay, so I don't have I have a
So
gear
now
in
you'll
transit,
get-
now I got green, and I got no green light on the left.
Correct. So you know something is wrong.
Okay.
So you need, go ahead and cycle the gear. So if you want to, cycle it up, now I can eliminate that failure.
Yeah.
So you cycle it down, go ahead and cycle it back down.
Now, traditionally, that switch is known as an instructor entertainment panel.
Yes.
So in the other airplanes, we just pull the breaker.
Okay, yeah, this
Here-
makes it a
here
lot
you can-
easier
here you
because
can do
I don't have to
variations.
reach over here to get the breaker. I can stay in my own space.
So let's talk about that push to talk in the back seat.
Yeah, so a lot of the flight training schools, both from an airline perspective and a university perspective, are incorporating something called Gemini training, or incorporating multiple people into the training. So you'll have 2 students and 1 instructor for a couple of different reasons. Some of those are efficiency. So, hey, I'm based at a really busy airport. It takes a long time to get a taxi, get a clearance, get out of the space, wait for all the traffic to be clear so that we can take off. That might take a half an hour to depart and 20 minutes to come back in. Whereas if you have 2 students in there and you only have to depart that busy airspace once per 2 students as opposed to twice, you could go elsewhere, hot swap the students at a much less busy airport, and basically reduce your ground time by a half an hour or 40 minutes.
You also have the observational advantage of the student. in the
That's
back.
correct, yes.
Much has been written about the trick of landing the Cirrus, but it's not much of a trick so much as it is just accepting that 2 fast landings will risk porpoising, just as it would in a mooning. And the view over the nose is flatter because of the downsloping cowl. If any of that matters in either the quality of the training or the value of the TRAC as a trainer, I sure can't say why. You have to learn to land whatever you're flying, and the Cirrus isn't harder and maybe not that much different either. While Cirrus is showing the TRAC based on the SR-20, it will also offer a version based on the SR-22 airframe. You can find a full report on the TRAC and the training market in the December 2019 issue of Aviation Consumer magazine. For AVweb and Aviation Consumer, I'm Paul Bertorelli reporting. Thanks for watching.